Hi, everybody. You can unmute yourselves if you want.
Okay.
Don't all talk at once. Welcome. It's nice to see so many people here early. We did this once before and we had about 85 participants. So we were safe. But this time I understand that one of the families shared it with their school. So then I got nervous. But hopefully everyone will get in.
Oh, yeah.
I see familiar and new faces. So it's always nice to have an audience. We so miss performing in person. I think I speak for everyone. And when I say that,
Okay.
really hoping to go back in the fall. Fingers crossed. So I was just reading some good news for the local people here, which is most of you. The Cinema 9 will reopen as a movie theater.
Yes, I heard that. I heard the name of the cinema is going to be called not Regal Cinema 9, but it's going to be called Santa Cruz Cinema. That's what they're calling it, Santa Cruz Cinema. Yeah.
Right. It's exciting. I guess the state redevelopment department.
Yeah.
In encouraging, it sounds like this is the owner of the building, but they also operate drive-in theaters. I'm in the middle of
something like that, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm happy to hear that because it's nice to have that right downtown.
Yeah, it is.
And the independent theaters, as much as I love them, they can't show every movie.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
It's good to have that coming back.
Yeah.
So I understand Mr. Berman, who will be joining us shortly, is actually on a little getaway this weekend. He's up in Sea Ranch, which I know it's on the beach. I know it's up north somewhere, but I was happy to hear that he was getting a little bit of a break because it's been a lot of work for him to do a whole new format this year for the students.
Put it on the floor.
And
we'll sweep it up later. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm glad he's getting a little bit of a break. Let's see. Someone sent me an email. Okay. Oh, Miranda Yu is here. She just emailed me. There's Mr. Berman.
Can't hear her.
Talking about my folks, can you hear me okay?
Oh, now you're gone.
There we go. I couldn't see my head.
So we just lost Mr. Oh, there he is. He's coming back. I know he's in a new place. And I hope he has internet that can handle the.
Yeah, I hope it'll be okay, but I've moved much closer, so I think now it should be all right. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you well.
Yeah.
Now.
Great. Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, and I've got, a whole lot of windows open, a lot of audio to play. Hopefully it'll go well. There might be a few glitches along the way, so we'll just ask your patience if that happens. Well, hello and welcome everyone.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. It's really a pleasure to see you all and to be able to share the music we've worked on this quarter. I'll quickly introduce the three types of things you'll hear. Really 2 orchestral pieces and then some pieces we put together as a process this quarter in collaboration with one of our violinists, Hannah Kuo. And so I'll ask her to pop on in just a second to talk about how we work together on this.
Okay,
So
why is this not playing?
This quarter, we did 2 orchestral pieces, completely different ones. First of all, the finale from Brahms' First Symphony. And I would say this is a very familiar piece from the rep. We did it in arrangement, so it's not as long as the first movement you might have heard. Sorry, just one second. The internet connection was poor in the back room. But it is still a lovely piece and beautifully played by our students. Our process for doing a piece like this is that I create a MIDI file, in other words, a sort of computer-generated representation of the music, and along with a click track, and the students play to that. And that's the way that we kind of get the recordings done for our purely orchestral rep. You'll hear that if you know the piece well, some instruments are missing. I put in, since we didn't have horns this quarter, I put in a little bit of electronic horn that won't be as lovely as hearing the original instrument. But for the most part, we covered everything. And you'll hear, of course, the very famous melody from this piece in the last movement being in C major. Melody that in its time was favorably compared, and probably for good reason, to the melody of the Ode to Joy by Beethoven. And in fact, Brahms was annoyed by that, and he sort of said something to the effect of, well, any idiot could hear that, but probably was secretly pleased. The other piece is by a much more contemporary, though now we think of him as more early 20th century composer, Henry Cowell. This is not the same Henry Cowell we know from the Cowell Redwoods. This is a composer who was part of this sort of East Coast phenomenon, absorbing world musics, as well as many other sort of, at that time, very boundary pushing approaches to making music. For example, he has a sort of massively famous piece in the world of new music called the Tides of Manouan. The name of the place is escaping, something close to the Tides of Manouan, where the pianist plays entirely inside the piano, making glissandos with their hand rather than playing the actual keys. This piece that you'll hear today is not quite as boundary pushing as that. It's a 2-part piece called Hymn and Fuguing Tune No. 3. And so what Cowell did was he chose as his inspiration the tradition of American traditional singing called shape note singing. Sorry, it escaped me for a second there. And he took a shape note tune and first made it into this very lyrical, kind of moderate first movement. And you'll hear the tune come up in a, well, maybe I'll save this for right before you hear it, but basically you'll hear the tune introduced in this flowing manner. And then there's a second half, the fuguing tune, where he puts that into a fast moving texture that's much more upbeat and exciting. And it just uses the same melody, but like in shape note singing, there's this fuguing process. So the second part of what we've done this quarter is to work with Hannah Kuo on improvisations that we create together based on Hannah's, based on basically these kind of backing tracks that Hannah created. And Hannah, if you could hop on here, I just want to ask you a couple of questions about it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so this came about because last quarter I was having you all do individual improvisations where you would simply work with this app we're using called BandLab and make multi-track recordings. And Hannah started to like incorporate electronic instruments, playing multiple instruments, and I was really impressed with that, as well as her knowledge about kind of recording technology, mixing and all this. So we talked about the possibility of her doing some backing tracks for our students to create improvisations over. And Hannah, you did a wonderful job with that. Can you just quickly tell us what your process was to create them?
Yeah, so first I just brainstormed the kind of genre that I wanted it to be. Like I listened to different types of music, so I eventually chose like one is sort of more jazzy and one is more mystical, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose instruments to kind of shape it around that. And coming up with the chords themselves were a lot easier because they're just pretty simple. So it was more of figuring out how it should sound, like what the texture should be.
Yeah. Yeah, and in each one of these tracks, what I'm planning to do is I play them is maybe just play a few seconds of the track that you created, so people can kind of have a sense of like what is the background, and obviously the foreground is the instruments. But what they won't necessarily hear from me doing that is with each track, you introduce kind of extra instruments in the electronic part and other ideas in the background as we go along. So yeah, bravo on that work. What Hannah was saying about the chords being relatively simple, this is a process we're doing all in modal improvisation. And that means that rather than changing chords where you have a tonal relationship of presumably the first chord and last chord being the most important, and then there's a hierarchy of chords that relate to that key. In modality, we're working all within the notes of one scale. So there can be different chords, but really none is necessarily taking us away from the notes of the scale of the very first chord. Hannah, did you have a chance to, how was the process of actually improvising once you were working with your own track, and how did you think students were doing with fitting their work into it?
I think it was really interesting to try to improv with my own track because in some sense I felt like there wasn't more that I could add. But it was interesting to I just let it play, and then I went along with it and was pleasantly surprised at how it turned out. And I think from in the rehearsals we heard some of the first drafts of it, and I thought it sounded pretty interesting. Like everybody had their own different idea of how it would sound. And thank you for everyone that contributed.
Yeah, indeed. All right, well, let's get started. And maybe we'll try to save a minute or two at the end if you have any questions from what you're hearing, everybody. So let's start with two of Hannah's tracks. And let's see. Yeah, let's start with this one, the F major track. Let me just play a few moments. First of all, this will be an experiment to make sure that it's being shared with you, but I believe it should be. But I'm going to play a few moments of the track that Hannah created without the rest of the students being involved. So here's the F major project. Okay, did you all hear that very well? No? Did you hear anything? Okay, just one second. Just one sec, folks. Oh, I think I understand what's happening. Hmm. Let me give this another shot. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try coming off the headphones that I'm using because I think that's probably causing some of the issue. Okay, let's try this. One more time. Okay, so you get a sense, just a bouncy accompanimental track. What I thought was really cool about this, and I want to just throw it out there for a quick question. I think the first to submit tracks on this were Sophie, Matea, and Xander. And did you guys work together at all, or did you just hear each other's tracks and just kind of go with what the other person was playing?
We didn't work together. I just recorded first because I'd had like sort of a melody in my head for a little bit in F major. And so I recorded that and then a second track to accompany it, and then Xander recorded.
Great. Okay, well, let me play the entire project.
Mr. Thurman, we're not hearing anything.
Nathaniel, I think you are muted.
I'm sorry, you were not able to hear any of that just now? Okay, so it's tricky, you guys. I'm sorry. I'm in the same room as my partner who's cooking, and I expected to be in a back room where we don't have internet connection as well. So you might hear a little bit of background sound, but it seems that I can't mute myself without muting the sound of the music. Sorry for the frustration, everybody. Here it comes again. Bravo, you all. So I've just had a revelation. Thanks, Jack, for saying this to me. I became discombobulated having to switch rooms and then reorienting myself. I just forgot to share my computer sound. And so you were just basically hearing it from my computer speakers. My apologies. It's a rookie mistake just from the circumstances. If we have time, I'm going to go back and play that again, but I want to move forward in case some of you have a deadline at the end of our hour or so here. So I would like to move on to the next project by Hannah, which let's do the first one in B flat major. There are two in B flat major here. And in case it's not clear enough, I've been talking about improvisation. The players simply received these files, these background files that Hannah created of electronic sound, and a click track, which I've now muted so you're not hearing those clicks. And then they just knew what key they were to play in, and they were just allowed to sort of take whatever direction their imagination wanted. Ideally, building something together where they were hearing each other and sort of responding to what the other person is playing. But another approach to which was perfectly fine was to sort of go in one's own direction. So this time I will share computer sound. I'm not going to, Jerry, I need to be the co-host for this, if you could make me co-host. Thank you. Okay, so let's just hear a little of Hannah's background track for this. So you can hear this is more of a dreamscape, slow moving, slow expanding. This is another one where if you're listening to the background carefully, you'll hear other elements enter as it goes along. Yeah, definitely the dreamiest one of the pieces. So let's listen to this together. Bravo, you guys, very beautiful. One thing I didn't mention is as part of doing this improvisation process, we learn how to, a little bit more than we might have, work with digital audio workstation types of programs. So BandLab is one of those. This is not intended to be a sponsorship. It's just, it's handy because it can be used on any device or computer. And it also allows for a function called looping, which probably most of you understand already, but it means that you can record 20 seconds, 15 seconds, as long or as short as you want, and then create a loop of the music that you've played. And that can be interesting because what some of the students have done is take a bit that may or may not match up with the sort of meter or number of meters in a phrase, number of bars in a phrase, and then extended that so it plays in a different way against the chords in the background, which sort of changes the mood of what you've heard the first time. Okay, let's go to our first recorded piece of repertoire, the Brahms finale of the First Symphony. I want to give a huge shout out to somebody who's not here right now, who just was a massive help this set, and that's Tim Hammersley, who happens to be Ruth Updegraff's one of her two sons. Both of her two sons played in the Youth Symphony for many, many years and graduated a few years back. And so as I was seeking help with doing all the recording work, Tim kindly stepped forward, and he's been doing a lot of this kind of work in his college career. So it was a great help, and these things sound great. So yeah, without further ado, let's go on and listen to this recording of the last movement of Brahms' First Symphony. All right, bravo, everyone. Yeah, so just wonderful to hear it come together after all this time. It's difficult, any one of these players can relate this, to just kind of record a piece of music in our bedrooms, you know, as we can week by week, instead of the work that we normally do side by side, thinking about being an ensemble. And yet it's still important for us to think about repertoire and to play together, you know, in such a way that we realize it kind of at the end of our set like this. So for all of you who put in that difficult effort to work in that sort of frustrating way, we appreciate the effort so much. Okay, let's move on to another one of Hannah's pieces. And let's do the, yeah, so this is the piece we did in F Lydian, which is a fancy really way of saying that it's a mode structured around F that uses the notes of C major. So let me play for you a few moments of this, which is actually the beat that I first heard Hannah create, well, based on the beat I heard Hannah create last quarter, that made me think this would be a fun project to work on with her. Sorry, one sec. So that's where it starts. You can hear it's just like a totally different kind of jazzy beat, really fun. You called this lo-fi beat, didn't you, Hannah? What was the inspiration for this one?
So there's this YouTube channel that plays, I think, 24 hours, and it's just titled like Lo-Fi Beats for Studying. So if you know what it is, you can just go online and search for it. And it's kind of that same feel to it, like with the beats and the piano. The instrument is actually called lo-fi piano, I think.
Very cool. All right, let's hear what we all did with it. Yeah, well done. There was some really creative use of the looping feature there. So I don't know if you picked up on some of the repetitions that were happening and then changes to those repetitions. So that was a really wonderful project. And let's go straight on to the last one of these projects. This is Hannah's second project she created in the key of B flat. And let's just hear a little bit of what's going on with this one. So you can hear there's like a laid back jazzy feel to this one. And the players just did some wonderful things with it. So let's hear the entire thing. All right, bravo, bravo all. Yeah, it's so lovely to get to hear the kids' creative work. Sorry, you're not kids, it's just an expression. The players' creative work. And it's something we're going to continue on to next set very intensively, because you may have heard this and it can be officially announced now. We're doing a collaboration with composer Danny Clay. And Danny works with both professionals and student musicians, kind of in a similar vein in a lot of his work, where he's asking players to work on playing in a relatively improvised way from cues. Sometimes those cues are written musical cues. Other times they're drawn symbols, and other times they're just from kind of conversational cues about thoughts or putting yourself in a certain headspace and seeing what you want to play from that. and Danny creates sort of collages from the musical responses he gets to those cues, and then sort of assembles them together to form a cohesive piece. And he's done a lot of this kind of work, so I'm excited to see how he interacts with everybody online. It's interesting process because it really takes place in real time, where Danny will give these kind of cues and talk to us about how we might improvise with them or play to these ideas. And then players would simply mute themselves on camera and record themselves, in real time during the rehearsal based on the ideas that Danny's put forth. So it's a really great new way for us to work. It's one of just a few things we'll do, but it's going to be extremely exciting for us because the Cabrillo Festival of Music is co-sponsoring this project, and they'll be presenting it on their live web stream as a sort of adjacent presentation with the Cabrillo Music Festival in early August. So super exciting opportunity for all of us. All right, let's go to the last piece. And so this is the Cowell piece I talked about earlier. It's called, again, Hymn and Fuguing Tune No. 3. And as I said, it's just in 2 sections. If you listen carefully for the melody that you just hear in the first few moments, all throughout the orchestra, especially in the strings, and kind of remember the shape of that melody, that's exactly what gets taken into the fast section. It's about 3.5, 4 minutes into the piece and becomes the sort of bouncy, jouncey, whereas in the beginning, it's so lyrical and feels like an aria. Then it becomes this extremely, I wouldn't say chaotic, but certainly, all fugues kind of build a counterpoint with the main subject. And this is no different from that. If you're familiar with the composer, one composer I'm sure you're familiar with is Aaron Copeland. And I hear a little bit of Copeland in that second fast section. But then the composer Alan Hovhaness, I can't help but think that he influenced the sound of the first section because I really hear a lot of the way that his counterpoint worked in that. So if you happen to be familiar with those composers, it's a piece I really love, and I hope we'll come back to playing it when we're side by side. So here it is, and I'll share it with you. Bravo to everybody.
Yay!
Yay. I love that piece so much. It's just so unusual. Not to say it sounds unusual or wild, but it doesn't really sound like anything else other than those two composers that came to mind for me. I don't know how you felt about it, but it also has some fun parts for xylophone, as you heard. The trombones get to play a lot more, and bravo to the trombones on that great work. It's much more equanimitable for the players from top up to the bottom of the score. There's something fun for everybody to do. So I was pleased that we got to work on that piece this set. Yeah, thanks for your great feedback, everybody. I think what I'll do is quickly ask if there's any questions or any feedback or anything from the players that you want to mention about the process or anything like that. And then maybe I'll just end the meeting by going back and playing the piece I didn't play with adequate audio the first time around. So any questions, anything come up as you all listen to this? Okay, so let me go back and play that first piece for you now. Yeah. And can I give one more curtain call for Hannah Kuo? I just want to say bravo to you. It was really fun working on this set, and thank you for the time you took to make them. So bravo.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thanks everyone who participated. Like, I just did the chords, but you guys made the melodies.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll keep taking up a project like this in the future. So I really appreciate your work. And to all of you who've contributed this quarter and helped make these pieces and our experience in class the quality experience that it was, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and we'll resume it in just a week with meeting Danny for the first time and getting to work on his project and some others. Yeah, so thank you so much to everyone. And with that, I'm going to say, enjoy the rest of your weekend and good evening.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Thank you. Bye.
Good to see you all.
Yeah, good to see you.
Looks like we had a lot of guests, which is so nice.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you for hosting, Jerry. I'm going to sign off now.
Sure. Have a good weekend, Nathaniel.
Thank you. Good evening.
Bye. Bye, everyone. See you next time.